So you're training for a half marathon and you know you need to eat better. You're trying to figure out, what do I eat right before the race? What do I eat in the weeks leading up to the race? Well, I'm Jesse Funk, and on today's episode of Runner's High, we're going to talk about what to eat before your race and the weeks before your race. If this is your first time with me here on the channel, hit that red subscribe button down in the bottom right hand corner right down there. I say that not just because you need to listen to me, but because I interview some of the very smartest people on the planet involving athletics, especially involving nutrition, which is what's important to you today, right? So if you don't want to take my word for it in this episode, go check out those episodes on the Smart Athlete Podcast, episode 3 with registered dietitian Gloria Stoverink. She actually works for us and she brings out a recipe for us every single week. And I've also recently interviewed 2 other registered dietitians, world-renowned registered dietitian Nancy Clark, author of Nancy Clark's Sports Nutrition Guidebook. She sold 750,000 copies, so she's definitely got something to say. And then Katie Hake, another registered dietitian who is on the rise. And they all have something to say about sports nutrition. And we talk a lot about running as well in those interviews. So if you don't want to listen to me, you're free to hop out of this particular video right now, but I'm going to give you some suggestions from them and then my own personal experience in this video. So enough plugging the other content. Let's get on to what do you actually eat before your half marathon. My first tip in figuring out what to eat isn't necessarily a specific food you need to eat, but a habit. And that is, don't try to cram a bunch of new foods in right before your race. When you are getting ready for any race, be it a half marathon, 5K, Ironman, whatever it is, you should be practicing good nutrition habits all the way through training up until race day. Now, this may seem like a kind of duh suggestion, but there are so many kind of common sense ideas that kind of get thrown out of the way when we're in the middle of the training and we want to kind of splurge a little bit. It's okay to have a treat here and there, but it's a whole different mentality if you think to yourself, well, I just went out and ran 10 miles today, so I'm just gonna have a dinner of ice cream, or I'm gonna have nachos for a snack. When you do that, you're shorting yourself and the training you're doing because you're not giving yourself the kind of nutrition you need to, maximize your own potential. So that's my first tip. Practice good nutrition all the way through training, all the way up until race day, so that your body is used to the foods. It follows that axiom for everything, nothing new on race day. And then also you give your body the ability to recover and prep yourself for that half marathon that you're training for. My second suggestion, and a lot of these suggestions are not going to be specific foods, because specific foods have to do with kind of your taste, what you've eaten growing up, all these kind of things. In your gut microbiome is affected by the things you eat. So if I tell you to go eat X, Y, and Z, maybe that doesn't necessarily sit well with you, and there's kind of a period where the bacteria in your gut have to adjust. If you want to know more about that, again, check out episodes of the Smart Athlete Podcast. I think episode 9 with Dr. Greg Rosicki and episode, I'm not sure, one with Dr. Matt Lay. They both study the gut microbiome in runners. So number 2, my suggestion here involves protein. How much protein should you be taking in? And those registered dietitians that I've spoken to will actually have different suggestions here. So first I'm going to give you my personal experience, and that's roughly 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. So I weigh roughly 165 on any given day, plus or minus, depending on what I'm doing. So that means I should be taking in 165 grams of protein a day. This is kind of a rule of thumb that's been used by anyone from amateurs through Olympians, and was actually suggested at the Olympic Training Center, I think, for a considerable amount of time. Now, those dietitians I've spoken to will say as low as a half gram per pound of body weight. So again, because I'm 165, that means that my intake range should be somewhere between about 82 and 165 grams a day. This is considerably more than the average person needs to take in. Somebody who doesn't work out, isn't putting those demands on their body, only going to probably be in the 30 to 40 gram range. Again, that depends on their lifestyle, if they have health concerns, all those kind of things. But we can't go too deep into all of that. So figure out that range for you based on a half to 1 gram, and that should give you a good guideline of figuring out how much protein you should be taking in per day. My third suggestion should make sense, should be very simple, very easy to understand, and that is to take in carbs. I know that there are a lot of kind of, I won't quite say anti-carb, but really moving away from carb kind of fad diets that are going on right now. I'm a big fan of, again, Smart Athlete Podcast. I talked to Matt Fitzgerald. If you know who Matt Fitzgerald is, then you know he's written a lot of books, one of those being diet cults. So I'm not a fan of diet cults because they kind of trap you into one mindset of you can only eat this, not that, instead of trying to figure out what works with your body and what you need to fuel. They don't always take into account you as an athlete. So I am going to suggest eating carbs, and the reason is that we want those carbs to digest and be used as glycogen in our muscles. But the caveat here is that you can't just eat any carbs. It's not like, oh, okay, again, earlier I said, we went out for a 10-mile run, now let's just have a dinner of ice cream. That would be a bad idea. Not only are you missing your micronutrients from, plants, fruits, vegetables, grains, all those kind of things, you are getting a high glycemic index carb, which means your insulin's going to spike, you're going to have a sugar crash, and then your body is going to store a lot of that as fat instead of as glycogen fuel that's more easily burnt. So when you look at those carbs, try to take in more low glycemic index carbs. That's something that's not going to digest quite as quickly, won't make your insulin spike, and then shouldn't be stored as much as fat as some of those kind of often junk foods will be. Of course, if you want more personalized recipes and suggestions on what you should be eating and the ratio of carbs to fats to protein, there's nothing like hiring a registered dietitian to figure it out for you. So you can always, talk to Gloria, talk to Nancy, talk to Katie, or, pick up Nancy's Sports Nutrition Guidebook. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and you do not have to go cover to cover to get what you need. But there's nothing that's going to replace that personalized attention from somebody if you're confused about what you should be eating and trying to figure out that kind of optimal zone. So don't forget that is always an option, although I love having you here on the channel with me, and I love helping you. If you need personalized attention, go get it. Investing in yourself is one of the best investments that you can make. My fourth and final suggestion about what to eat for your half marathon training actually has to pertain to the week of the race. This is what you wanted, right? You just wanted to know about the week of the race. You didn't care about the rest of it. Well, I've shoved some good information at you. Please absorb it. But the week of the race is particularly important. Often there are two main temptations the week of the race because we're going to taper here, which means we're not working out as hard, we have more energy, we get a little jittery. So temptation one is to say, well, I'm not working out as much, so I just won't eat. I don't want to get fat before the race. That's a terrible idea. Don't change your diet significantly before the race. If you go through that and you say, oh, I don't want to eat anything, you can end up gassed at the starting line before you get going, which means you're going to have a bad time. I've been watching too much South Park. The other temptation is that you try to carbo load the night before. I'm not huge on carbo loading. I think if you eat well all the time, you're going to be fine on race day. If you want to carbo load, if you have to carbo load, do it 2 nights before. The issue here is if you jam all that food in your body, you may not have the time to digest everything, and then you could end up with GI issues the race morning because you're nervous, you're already going to the bathroom a bunch, and that can be, the recipe to have a really terrible day, a really terrible race. So you want to practice the same nutrition you always do the race week. Don't try anything new on race day. Don't try anything new on race week. If you have to carbo load, do it 2 nights before so you have plenty of time to digest all those carbs. If you want to know more about what my pre-race meal is and how to make a pre-race meal or how to design the perfect pre-race meal for you, hit that subscribe button and then go search the channel. I've already done a video on this, how to make the perfect pre-race meal for you, and then I share what my pre-race meal is I use for every race from 5K all the way through half Ironman. Doesn't matter what it is, this is my go-to meal. So stay around, see the other videos on the channel. I promise you'll be a better runner for it. I'll see you next time on the next episode of Runner's High.